Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the greatest military adventure stories ever recorded, Xenophon's Anabasis. This isn't just an ancient tale, it's a profound masterclass in leadership, strategy, and what it takes to survive against absolutely impossible odds.
Now, this isn't some thought experiment. This was the terrifying, stone-cold reality for a Greek army back in 401 BC. It was a situation that would push them to the very limits of human endurance and creativity.
And that number? 10,000. That's roughly how many Greek mercenaries, the legendary 10,000, suddenly found themselves totally stranded, leaderless, and hunted deep inside the massive, hostile Persian Empire. So, how did they end up in such a mess? Well, their story doesn't start with a desperate escape plan. It begins with a bold grab for power that goes catastrophically, horribly wrong. You see, the 10,000 were basically the special forces of their day, elite soldiers for hire. They were contracted by this guy, Cyrus the Younger, for one very specific job: march into the heart of Persia and snatch the throne from his older brother, King Artaxerxes II. The Greeks were meant to be the secret weapon in this high-stakes family feud.
And on the battlefield, the Greeks were unstoppable. They did exactly what they were paid to do, just crushing the forces opposite them. But then, disaster strikes. In a single, chaotic moment, their employer, Cyrus, is killed in the fighting. And just like that, they had won their battle, but they had lost the entire war. No purpose, no paycheck, and no way home.
Okay, so now they're stranded and getting desperate. A Persian governor, a satrap named Tissaphernes, comes to them with what looks like a lifeline. He offers a truce and promises them safe passage home. He invites all the senior Greek generals to a friendly meeting to sort out the details. But it was all a lie, a brutal trap. The generals were captured and executed, decapitating the army's entire command structure in one swift, treacherous move. And this is where that term Anabasis really comes into play. It literally means a going up from the coast, but for the 10,000, its meaning got flipped on its head. For them, it was now about a desperate march for survival out of the depths of an empire that wanted every last one of them dead. They were in a state of absolute crisis. So in this moment of just complete despair, facing total annihilation, the army did something almost unheard of for its time, something that turned this from a story of disaster into one of legend. Just think about how radical this was. Instead of falling apart, which is what you'd expect, right? These common soldiers held a democratic assembly. They stood up and elected new leaders from their own ranks. This wasn't a king or a state appointing anyone. This was an army on the move, transforming itself into a mobile, self-governing republic, choosing its own fate in the middle of hostile territory. And among these newly elected leaders was a man named Xenophon. He wasn't your typical general. He was an Athenian scholar, a student of Socrates, who would also become the guy to write this whole story down. He stepped up and rallied the men with these powerful words, arguing that their courage, not their numbers, was their real weapon. He literally pulled them back from the brink with a mix of cold logic and pure inspiration. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Survival forced the 10,000 to innovate. Their grueling retreat basically became a moving laboratory for military strategy, creating lessons that would echo for centuries. See, the standard Greek way of war, the rigid flanks of heavy infantry, was designed for big battles on open plains. It was completely useless in the mountains and tricky terrain of Persia. So they had to adapt, and they had to do it fast. They broke down into flexible, multi-role units. They integrated slingers, archers, and even a makeshift cavalry. We're talking about a pioneering example of combined arms tactics, invented on the fly out of pure necessity. And they didn't just endure, they were active problem solvers. Harassed by Persian archers? Okay, let's recruit some Rhodian slingers who can outrange them. Lacking scouts? Fine, let's put 50 guys on baggage horses and create a cavalry screen. They were constantly using small teams to seize high ground, always adapting their marching formations. They were literally rewriting the tactical playbook as they went. Xenophon understood a principle that is now Military Doctrine 101, logistics win wars. The army traveled light. They ditched all the non-essential gear. Every single soldier had to carry his own supplies, which turned them into this swift, mobile force that valued endurance and speed above everything else. So after months of brutal fighting, of starvation, of crossing these treacherous, snow-covered mountains, the army's vanguard finally crested a hill, and they saw something that changed everything. The ladder, The sea, the sea. I mean, can you even imagine that moment? That legendary cry from the men who first spotted the Black Sea? It was just pure, unadulterated relief. It meant they'd made it. They had survived. But the impact of their incredible journey was really just getting started. Because this march was so much more than an amazing survival story. It was a proof of concept. It demonstrated to the entire Greek world that the seemingly invincible Persian Empire was a kind of hollow giant. Its huge size was actually a weakness, not a strength. A small, disciplined, and adaptable army could march right through its heart and live to tell the tale. And that, right there, is the march's true legacy. This story directly inspired Alexander the Great to invade Persia a couple of generations later. I mean, talk about influence. It became a foundational text on leadership and logistics under pressure, and it's why it's still required reading at military academies and business schools today, a timeless masterclass in crisis management. So the epic journey of the 10,000 really leaves us with a powerful question. What is the true source of an organization's strength? Is it the numbers? The technology? Or is it the ability to adapt when all your plans have completely failed? Their story suggests that the most powerful weapon you can have is the collective resilience, the ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit of your people when they're forged in the face of disaster. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.